Hello and welcome to Talent Acquisition Trends and Strategy. I'm your host, James Mackey, and today we are joined by Eric Tagarel. Eric, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being here with us today. Before we jump into it, could you please share a little bit about your background with everybody?
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Eric. Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. Moved out to Seattle here. That was where I reside for the last 13 years. I've had some decent experience in the talent acquisition field, working for AWS and Oracle and Microsoft. And now I'm actually with a company called MCG Health, who is currently owned by Hearst Health or Hearst Organization. I'm sure most of you know them by their magazines and newspapers that they own. But my team is I have about 3 people on my team now, and for talent acquisition, and with a company size of just over 400. So looking to continue to grow.
For sure. And so you, in addition, so right now I would consider like 400 or 500 people as like a growth stage, sort of, right? So they're kind of in that sweet spot, or how would you define where you are in terms of business life cycle?
I would say we're in a more like a steady growth. We're very strategic about when we open roles. It's based on, not extending ourselves too far. Obviously, the one thing that we hate to have to do is to bring on a bunch of people and then down the road going, we don't, we have too many now. We have to lay anybody off. So we're very strategic about our thinking when it comes to that. So it's one of the great things that appealed to me about this organization was it wasn't just go out there and hire as many as you can, and then 6 months to a year later, oh, sorry, we have to let half you go. We don't like doing that.
Right. It's not the venture capital playbook
Right.
in the tech industry, which is like, yeah, I mean, honestly, it seems like most of the category leaders in tech, at least, like they follow that strategy, right? It's like they're so aggressive when it comes to growth and hiring. And a lot of the times they'll sacrifice every core metric. Like we were talking about finance earlier, right? Like
Yeah.
all the core like revenue, finance metrics just to staff up and try to accelerate growth. But then it's like when the market turns, it's they're aggressive in the other direction, right? They
Right.
cut deep. So yeah, I can always, from a cultural perspective, I feel like it's always better. Many times it's better to work at companies that are a little bit more um critical about growth. Well, I don't know if critical is the right word, but they're just kind of past that like earlier stage where there's all that volatility. I mean, you can learn a lot at those companies that do a lot of the cuts. Like it's like very high growth in terms for individuals as well. But yeah, I feel like from a culture perspective, there's just no comparison, right? Like working at a stable company that's been around a little bit longer.
Well, I mean, and I look at like the high growth companies a lot of times as they're high growth for a temporary amount of time, and then eventually they're no growth, because they grew too fast, too much, and didn't have enough. It like I said, it takes a lot of forethought and a lot of critical thinking to look to the future. I mean, for example, we're right now just finishing up our budget meetings last week and looking for 2023, and you know what do we want to spend next year, budget wise on headcount. Obviously that's big, for me, talent acquisition. That's sounds good for me. Most people don't really care, but for me it's like but you want to take your time and think it through, because these are not just jobs, these are people's lives that you're messing with too. I can't tell you how many times I've seen on LinkedIn this year people who had their visas get transferred, and then before they even started they were told, oh, sorry, we're pulling out your offer, and they have maybe a month to find another job. And
Yeah.
talk about stress. I'm sorry, that's way too stressful.
Yeah, I mean that's it. People get like kind of tied into some of the big salaries at these companies, but it's like, yeah, okay. So like let's say for a recruiter, right? You can make, I'm just pulling numbers out of nowhere, but like a 115K salary, but at like a stable company, right?
Yeah.
Or you got like a company and a very high growth company that's like, all right, we're gonna pay you 180, right? Like something ridiculous where, like people are like, oh my God, like I've made it, like,
Right.
and so you get that paycheck. And so that's obviously, you're really excited about that. But then like 3 months later, the market turns and you're the first to get cut because you're at such a high rate. Like your wrap rate's even more expensive than that when you take into consider benefits and tax and all these types of things, right?
Hmm.
So it's like, it's money matters a lot. I mean, that's why we're working, right? I get it. Like, but also like you have to think about sustainability a little bit sometimes if it's a priority for you. And if you're going to go for the biggest paycheck, then a lot of the times you are going to have to trade that in for some level of stability, right? Not and that's a generalization, obviously, but it's just something for people to who are listening in. If you're in the recruiting, right? Like you got to think about that. Like if you're working for a high growth company and they're throwing money at you, it's just something to think about as you're considering your options, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, money is great. Trust me. Like you said, that's why we work. That's why we log into our computers every day or go to our desks if that's what you're doing. But, at the end of the day, you have to stop and think about, okay, money may be great, but how stable is this? Am I going to have a job in 6 months? And, I have to say that the great thing about working here is that there is stability. Like I said, we don't rush into a decision to open up new headcount. Obviously, if somebody's leaving, that's something that we will definitely always backfill. I have never seen a no come up since I've been here if anybody's left. And to be honest, something that's really rare that I haven't seen in a long time is I think we've had 3 people retire, at this company since I've been here, which is great. It's not like, oh, I didn't want to move on to something else. I didn't like working here. It was, hey, I've hit that spot in my career where I'm done. I just want to, sit on the beach with a book, and that's about all I want to do all day. And like I said, it's rare to hear about retiring anymore, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, that's great. And I saw too on your LinkedIn profile, you also had have experience working at like Oracle and Microsoft and some pretty big enterprise companies as well. So you have that experience under your belt too.
Yeah. Yeah. Working with Oracle was definitely interesting. It was always really gung ho. I mean, I was working for Oracle Cloud, so it was the cloud side of the business. And I started working there in the fall of 19, and I was managing the entire recruiting coordination team, which was about 5 people at that time, and then expanded it to about 27 people worldwide by the time I left last year.
Hey,
Yeah, I know, it
yeah,
was kind of crazy. But yeah, a lot of times it was like I was saying before, just go out and hire all these people, and it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of strategy in how they were going to do it. It was just go and hire, and you go bonkers for 9 months out of the year, and then all of a sudden, oop, we hit our hiring goals and we hit the top of the budget. So now we're on a hiring freeze, which I'm sure a lot of people have seen as candidates, before. Oh, Oracle's in a hiring freeze and they're not hiring anymore, and as for my team, it went from going 1,000 miles an hour to going 5 miles an hour.
right.
So yeah.
That's how it is in recruiting, right? It's like we never get it like this, or maybe at your company because it sounds a little bit more established and mature. But I feel like for most recruiters, it's like, all right, either we're stressed out completely because there's not a lot of hiring demand, and we're like so worried about job security too. Then like this massive kind of like whiplash where we're like in the other direction and we have way too many recs on our plate. It's so few and far between. It feels like when you get that sweet spot in the middle, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard to find that. It's really, I mean, we're not the best at it either. There are times where we go through a few months where there's just nothing new coming in. We're just doing, we're doing our backfills and replacement, candidates and such like that. And it can be slower and quieter, but then, we get other months where, oh, we've got some, so, we got some extra money this month. Let's go ahead and open up a couple new roles. So it is a roller coaster. For me personally, I'm a very proactive person, and probably working in recruiting is probably the dumbest idea I ever came up with because it's so reactive a lot of times. And I try to get an advantage anywhere I can and trying to be proactive, but it's tough.
Yeah, man. So I saw, and you started out in recruiting at Amazon.
Yeah, I was.
Is that right?
Yes, I did some work as an HR at Amazon when I first started back in 2015. Oof, man, feels like forever ago now. But doing work authorization for the HR team, and then just got myself dabbling in recruiting coordination, and really enjoyed working with the candidates. And I was lucky enough to work on the leadership team at AWS, and for all their L7 roles that they were hiring for, and just really nice to be able to help out some really high caliber candidates that we had come into the company. So
Oh, that's a great experience.
mhm.
Yeah, so you got a lot of really cool experience. I'm excited to kind of to get your perspective on everything today. And so it sounds like you're also thinking about scaling your team currently, particularly as we head into Q4. what's the structure of your current talent acquisition team, and where are you trying to, how are you thinking about scaling out your org?
Currently, I have 2 full-time recruiters on my team. I have a senior recruiter and a recruiter as well, and a contract recruiting coordinator. We're still trying to hash out the job duties of the recruiting coordinator and kind of get a more standardized process for them. The company has not had one before, and as a former recruiting coordinator, of course, I'm going to go ahead and champion that all the way. But working on standardized processes for them so that they know what they're doing every day and day out. But we're looking at a lot of our tech roles are handled by an agency. So obviously there's a premium that we're paying for those candidates. They want to do a lot of temp to hire. At the end of the year, we're going to be spending a lot more money than it would cost us to get a technical recruiter on board. I think if I look at it, if the trends are continuing, we figured out it probably costs us 3 technical recruiters a year to go through the agencies and have them do temp to hire. So we do eventually want to hire a technical recruiter, give me 3 recruiters, and maybe even a 4th if I'm in the middle of doing workforce planning for next year to see what each team is going to get approved for headcount wise, and then what is our expected attrition rate, because that's always going to have to figure in, because we got to do recruiting for that as well. And I try not to do too much recruiting. As a manager, you want to focus on more of the project work, and especially when your manager gives you the proverbial hand slap and says, "Eric, stop recruiting." You can let your team do that.
Yeah, you don't want it. It's like the fastest way to get burnt out too, right? When you're doing like 2 roles at once.
It's something fun. I want to try to do at least one at a time, just so it kind of keeps, breaks up some of the other stuff that you're like, cool, let me go talk to a bunch of people today.
Get some reps in, just so you don't, just flex you work out that muscle a little bit.
I don't want to get rusty.
Yeah, I hear you. No, yeah, it's scary to go hands off. It's scary, right? Because it's like just completely letting go of that skill set. I mean, I've been hands off for a while now. I did in the middle of COVID, like at the early days of COVID, I jumped back hands on because I had to. Oh, it's brutal. But it's like now it's like, they keep changing, like Greenhouse, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
They just did this like interface overhaul. Like I went in there the other day and I was like, what the hell happened? Like I can't find anything. like it's just, it happens so fast, man. You just step out for like a year or two and I can't, like it's all changed. So much has changed. Recruiting technology is just changing so fast now.
I know when they changed the most recent interface that they changed up, we have a link on our Greenhouse page for our internal job board, and they push it all the way to the bottom. And I had so many emails and so many questions from the entire company. They're like, "Where's our internal job board? Where'd it go?" And I'm looking for it too. And I'm like, God, I feel stupid here. And I'm like, I don't know. But, I'm like, I hate to say that's like the worst thing to say. I hate saying that as a manager. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, let me get back to you.
Right. Yeah, that's when you want those questions to come via email, so you don't have to answer on the spot.
I know, right?
Like, just funnel all questions through email, so I have 24 hours to figure this shit out. Please.
I tried to. I'm like, please hold your questions. Please email me. I'm busy right now.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, so let's one topic we haven't talked about on the show is just like role description of a recruiting coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we could slow down there. I know that wasn't on the initial agenda, but I think it's a good value add we can give to the community. So what's your how would you structure it, right? Like, what are the 3 outcomes you're trying to drive, or the top outcomes you're trying to drive? And then what is the day-to-day? How are you like building it out for your current recruiting coordinator? What have you seen work in the past? Have you been, as you scaled out teams for the function? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my first thing I'm going to tell you about a recruiting coordinator is that they are the front line of candidate experience for any organization. They do a lot more than I think a lot of people understand or think that they do. It is not an easy job. As a recruiting coordinator, you basically have 3 customers, if you want to say. You have your candidates, obviously, that you're working on. You have the recruiters that you're working with, and also the hiring managers and hiring team. So you have 3 different customers basically that you are trying to basically keep all in line at the same time. It takes a lot of skills and highly organizational skills. I mean, that's definitely one of the things that I look out when I want to hire someone. And obviously calendaring is huge. Thankfully, Greenhouse has got connections to everyone's Microsoft Outlook calendar, so we were able to piece that together. And it's easier than just emailing like we used to do in the old days. I don't know if the old days was like 3 years ago, but
Well, yeah, that's how fast this stuff is evolving, right? Like
I,
that's what I
you
was
know,
saying. It's like you step out for a minute
I
and
know.
you just don't. I don't know anything anymore.
Yeah. I mean, so for us, the most things, I leave it up to the recruiters to decide if they want the art recruiting coordinator to schedule their own phone screens. As I always like the recruiters do their initial phone screens with them. But I usually make sure that the hiring manager phone screens and the interview loops are scheduled by the recruiting coordinator. I make sure that they are involved in the kickoff calls or the interview kickoff, so that way they can be introduced if anybody on the hiring team has any questions in regards, especially in regards to scheduling. They know who to reach out to and have a point of contact. I think that's very, very important. The day-to-day is honestly working with candidates on their schedules and make sure they marry them up to the current calendars. And I think the one thing that has made the recruiting coordinator job easier is definitely the virtual world that we live in right now, where we do everything virtually interviews. We don't have to have them come in and play a giant game of Tetris and try to figure out how it's all going to fit back to back to back to back to back with no breaks, from start to finish. And it was, I remember those times before. That was extremely difficult, and now we can spread them out over 2 or 3 days. It makes it easier. But yeah, they're the lifeblood of recruiting. So if anybody tells you otherwise, they don't know what a recruiting coordinator does. Hard, I hate to say it.
I got you. So what do you ever have like recruiting coordinators do like sourcing motions for recruiters too, or do you segment that out as well? What do you think?
I have in the past, if it's something that they're interested in doing, if it's an interest of theirs. Really, some people are just, I would say recruiting coordination has 3 paths they can go in. Obviously, recruiting is one of them. They can go on to continue moving on in their career in that. Other ones, program or project management, usually a good next step, because honestly, a candidate is basically a project from start to finish. So the program or project, you're managing a project every day. Or executive assisting. I've seen a lot of recruiting coordinators go into being executive assistants, obviously because of their skills with the calendar.
Yeah,
those executives, oh man.
yeah, those
some of
calendars are
them,
nuts.
some of
Right.
them know their calendars really well. Some of them have no idea, and I've seen some of them, and my eyes just go cross-eyed. And it's like, whew.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would say that's the main career path. But I mean, I only want to push it on them if that's something that they're interested in, to kind of give them an idea, have them assist the recruiter with finding some good candidates. And I have done it in the past, and some of them found it really interesting, and some was like, not for me.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's all good.
So what are your thoughts on the sourcing position? Like, because I feel like the more talent coordinators you have, the fewer sourcers you likely need, because your recruiters then have more time to do full life cycle. So do you have any advice on like ratio breakdown of a team, like full life cycle recruiters, talent coordinators, sourcers, or just like maybe that's like a loaded question because it's obviously dependent upon the environment, but how do you think about the different roles within talent acquisition and like how to think about ratios in terms of headcount?
I think when it comes to a sourcing role, I think it's really going to depend on the volume of hiring that needs to be done. Obviously, you can only, bog down a recruiter with so many recs and so many open jobs. And if it's just, hey, they're supporting, that's all they have to support that entire department, but they have, 40, 50 open roles, and then absolutely a sourcer is going to help them bring in some good candidates. I think it's also good where if you start identifying hard to fill roles, I would tell you that we're lucky here at MCG. A vast majority of people apply on their own when we post it on LinkedIn or Indeed. We post our open roles there, and they come and they just know MCG. We used to be a company called Middleman Care Guidelines, so it's very well known to a lot of hospitals and doctors' offices and such like that using our products. And overall, I think we have good word of mouth. But other companies, you got to really go out there and find some good candidates. And I think eventually we're going to have to do that when I start bringing the technical recruiting in-house for here. That we're probably going to possibly have a sourcing recruiter as well to help bring in some really good candidates to find. But I personally think that it depends on the volume, and are there and identifying those hard to fill roles.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I feel like I haven't mastered the sourcing motion. Like we provide sourcers to our clients, like if they want them and we'll plug them into their talent acquisition motion. But
Mhm.
like when we've tried to build out sourcing teams at Secure Vision, right? Where it's like they're supporting our recruiters,
Yeah.
we've never really gotten the ROI that we expect to get. And it ends up like the cost to value, like it just doesn't usually add up. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's just because we're like a younger or we're like with contractors all in, we're probably around 40 people.
Mhm.
We're not like a, it maybe if we were like a 2,000 person company and had all that process built out, it'd be different. Like
Yeah.
usually our clients that have sourcing partners, they're bigger. They're like around 2,000 employees, right? Like usually we don't see that at like the 500 employee level. Usually there are exceptions, right? But
Right.
it's just interesting, right? Because I've seen better success just having full life cycle recruiters. Like they're working on a lower volume amount of recs and they're managing full life cycle. And I almost like the concept of having talent coordinators to for candidate experience and then having recruiters work full life cycle. I just feel like first off, there's 2 points. You're not introducing a third contact to a candidate. There's that just adds another layer of like just everybody has to be aligned. There's more meetings, right?
Yeah.
There's more opportunities for shit to slip through the
Ugh,
cracks. Like just simplifying it to 2 people versus 3. I feel like there's a lot of efficiency there.
yeah.
And the recruiters, like they're speaking with the hiring managers, they understand the business outcomes better. They're typically more senior.
Yeah.
Like all of those translate into response rates and acceptance rates that I feel like are going to be stronger than segmenting out sourcing. It's like the difference between full life cycle being, being a full life cycle account executive, right? And the
Yeah.
sales side and doing your own prospecting. Like I'd rather, if I was a salesperson, I want to manage end to end, and then I want help with getting proposals in place and getting agreements out.
Yep.
Like maybe, and if it's technical, maybe like pre-sales or yeah, like technical sales support, right?
Mhm.
Sales engineer, someone like that. But like pipeline management, experience management, right? Like that typically, I think you see the best experiences when you have somebody like senior managing end to end. You know what I mean?
Oh, I totally agree. And I think, from my point of view, I think, especially, I think a sorcerer is definitely needed for roles, like I said, like hard to fill roles or roles where you're going to have a lot of passive candidates, people who are not actually looking or not on the job market. They don't
Yeah.
have the little thing on LinkedIn that says open to work. And I think there's a couple times we've had to go back to the drawing board in a few roles and say, okay, we got to source a little bit because either A, we're not finding what we need in the initial applications that we're getting in, or maybe we're getting to about the hiring manager phone screen and not quite what they were looking for. And we've sourced, and thankfully, because we don't have that high of volume, our recruiters can do that on their own and prospect and such like that, which is great. But I said, like, for other organizations that are larger, higher volumes, I think that's definitely something that, and it's a good introduction for someone to want to work their way up through the ranks in recruiting and say, okay, well, I was a sourcing recruiter, now I'm a full life cycle recruiter, oh, now I'm a senior recruiter. It's a
Right.
great stepping stone for them, especially if someone wants to go from a talent coordinator to you know recruiting eventually.
Yeah, I think so. As we're kind of fleshing this out together, I think the way I see it is like you better have like a very rock solid process baked into
Yeah.
tech to ensure that nothing is slipping.
Right.
Like if you're gonna go with the sourcing role, like you really have to be very well organized and have all the right materials in place, process in place to ensure that you keep your response rates, your candidate experience, everything to where it should be. Yeah, it's just like for where we're at, like again, we have sourcing partners that are like embedded with customers, but we used to have like a back office sourcing team that kind of like went to whatever clients had like the hardest to fill roles or we were having trouble getting coverage, we would kind of plug that team in. And we actually this year we made the decision to not move forward with that motion anymore. Like we still have billable sourcing partners, but we don't have like the back office sourcing function anymore. That's like the ad hoc one. So yeah, I mean, I it's curious. It's like a constantly evolving function at Secure Vision.
Yeah.
But again, yeah, it's just been hard to find the real ROI for us specifically. So,
And I think recruiting overall is it's always evolving, it's always changing. I can sit there and say something to you today, 6 months down the road, it could be completely different, our outlook. So, it's always something that you just have to be prepared for anything to come at you. Anytime I open my laptop Monday morning, like, and you know, either it's gonna be something crazy or something just like, okay, that's standard, that's normal.
for sure, for sure. Hey, just high level, I know we wanted to talk a little bit about DEI and like what metrics and how you're all tackling that. But if we could just take a step back first, could you tell us about your tech stack? So it sounds like you're using Greenhouse. Are you using tools like Gym, Seek Out? Are you using like different job boards? Like what's your full stack end to end from like sourcing to offer, maybe even your HRS? Like what does it look like?
So HIRS definitely is Oracle. We're using HCM for that.
Oh.
Um, Not a particular personal fan of it, but I just actually, to be honest with you, funny, I just had a demo working with Workday this morning, and I was like, "Oh, this looks so pretty and it's great. I can do so many things with this."
Yeah.
But we do use Greenhouse is basically our main point for everything. We have a lot of everything pretty much integrates with it that we have. So when we post jobs, they go live, they go to LinkedIn, and they also go on Indeed. I do go directly to Indeed to work with a lot of the roles because they don't always transfer over very well through Indeed. But we actually end up getting most of our applicants through the Indeed postings. I just got
Yeah.
to make sure. Yeah, we actually do. To be
Really?
honest with
For
you, I
what
would
roles?
everything. Anytime I post something on there, I will tell you my recruiters will message me and they're like, "Did you update the role in Indeed?" And I was like, "Yeah, there was." Because it gives you like options for salary ranges and benefits, and so when it goes out right away, it basically just kind of gives the basic, shows the thing, you can
Mm,
links you to apply to our website. But if you go in and make sure you add things like the benefits that we offer, the kind of, if is it remote, and then the salary range as well. It's like once you hit that salary range in there, you get a ton of applications,
no shit. Okay, well, so maybe
and
that's the secret. You have to go in and like manually edit it.
you do,
I so
yeah.
I so we used a few years ago I invested in Indeed. I mean, I don't at the time it felt like a lot of money, but it really wasn't too much. But we were spending like 3 grand a month with them.
Hmm.
And it was like they had their customer success team helping us like customize our JDs and do all this stuff. For us, like we did not hit at all.
Hmm.
Like it was, and I don't know if that's because it's like more tech industry focused. A
Yeah.
lot of the roles we were working on at the time. I don't know. I mean, what I'm just like
Well, we
that's why I'm wondering how I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
we do everything on there. So it's not just our tech roles. I mean, we posted a role for a senior financial analyst this morning, and I had to make sure. I honestly think it's really having the salary range because I think it helps people kind of go, maybe I'm not quite there yet, or ooh, wow, look, I'm right in their wheelhouse, what they're looking for. But we do tend to get quality is not always there. Unfortunately, that's kind of where the trade. I mean, it's like that in anything in recruiting. You're gonna either get quality and not a lot of applications, or you're gonna get quantity and
right.
a ton of applications and not so much. But you do get at least options and gives us something to look through. And thankfully, I have some amazing recruiters who either go, "Oh, not fit for this one, but here's that one here." We can tag them to this rec. They might actually be a better fit for that one. Stuff like that.
What's your like so where do your hires come from? Like what would you say is your top source and you're like you're maybe
Uh,
three or something?
I would definitely say Indeed. I mean, mostly
Number
getting
one?
them to apply in Indeed. Yeah. I mean, we get some good ones with LinkedIn. There's a role that I'm recruiting for right now. It's a project manager for my team. Actually, I'm under the umbrella here at MCG. We call it rebranded to People and Culture. So it's my team and talent acquisition, human resources team. We're all together. And we're looking for a project manager, just both teams. And I will say though that with that role, I got a really good ones out of LinkedIn. That was my best ones. We're in the final stages with 3 candidates right now, and
Hey.
I will definitely two of them actually reached out to me on LinkedIn. So I was like, yay, thank you. And they made it to the finals. Okay, good. I know I'm good at my job. Thanks.
That's awesome. And so for like for are you using any like database tools like Seek Out or email cadences or anything like that? Primarily
No,
just postings and yeah.
yeah.
That's great.
postings, and it's pretty much just word of mouth. And I always tell my recruiters, and I'm like, if you open something, post it on LinkedIn, make a separate posting, share it on your LinkedIn page with all of your connections. And I think LinkedIn has been a great resource, especially nowadays, people just reaching out and you like something, and if you may not be connected, but all their connections will see that they like that. And it ends up just being a whole broad network of people that, will look at your job. So, which is great.
I totally agree. And so let's get into DEI real quick. So
Sure.
what are the metrics? Like, what are the, like, just in terms of what I'd really love to talk about is like tactics, implementation, metrics, outcomes, just really diving into actionable things that people can take away from this combo.
Absolutely. So the first thing that we do when it comes to DE&I on the recruiting side, as I can really speak to, is we use a company called Textio, and basically we run our job descriptions through them. So they basically look through and make sure, we're being equal on both sides, not too masculine or not too feminine or anything like that, making sure we're using the right words, and we get a score at the end. And I like to usually kind of track where we were to start, where we finished off after we ran it through. It's usually a pretty stark contrast, which means we have to kind of go back and look and say, okay, maybe we need to work on writing our job descriptions in a more diverse way, which is fine. We learn that over time. So that's the first thing that we do.
Is that just real quick, the name of that tool, just so people can, how do you, like, what's the website or something so people can check it out?
It's textio.com, textio.com.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Thank you. I just want to make sure people got that.
Yeah. And they're based here in Seattle too. So I think they're actually next door.
Oh, nice.
They're building next door to us. So yeah. But yeah, it's a great tool. Gives me some insight especially when we're going through the job descriptions or even the job postings and going, oh, okay, we missed the spot there. I can see where we could do that better. So for me personally, I take that and, we'll apply it to the next one. So just make sure that all our job postings and job descriptions are continually getting more diverse as we go along. Some of the other things one of the things that we worked on and that I thankfully got implemented was I worked with a company called diversejobboards.com, and they're actually owned by a company called Circa. And what this company does is they will take your jobs that you have posted on your website. Basically, for us, it's MCG Health website, and they will post it to diverse job boards all over the country. So, things for like that focus on veterans or African Americans or Asian Americans or anything, Latinos and the LGBTQ community, of course, making sure that we're, showing that, number one, that we support diversity 100%. And our initial goal for that was, we want to have at least 75% of our jobs posted. I came back to the CEO. I said, how about 100? Does that work for you? 100%. He's like, yes, that's just totally fine. So anytime something new comes up, it does get posted, and they pick it up and they post it basically everywhere, all over the country. So it's nice to see when it comes through Greenhouse as our, because we do have an implementation with them, and there'll be a little notation on there. It says Circa, so I know they came from a diverse job board. So we're having diverse candidates come through.
That's great. Do you know what like percentage of applicants are coming from that service?
We're actually working on that right now, we realized we didn't have the most advanced package with Greenhouse. So even though there's data in there, we can't access all of it yet. So I'm in the process of actually negotiating with Greenhouse to obviously upgrade our contract so that we can have access to all that data and provide that, which is I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, for sure. We had a couple of our more recent guests. We talk about like Google Business Intelligence package to kind of sit on top of Greenhouse or Tableau. There's just a Gainsight, I think, as well. Pretty sure. So there's some good tools too that some companies starting at around 500 employees are starting to look into to even extract more data. And some of them have like data analysts working on it. But I think what I heard from one leader was like, you don't need the data analyst to start, like just get it up and running and you can pull some reports. And then like, as the team grows, you can actually have a full-time data analyst. But I also think the tech's getting better now to where it doesn't necessarily require a full-time person, but yeah, there's all sorts of interesting ways to pull better data. I mean, Greenhouse, I think, does a better job than a lot of the ATS providers, but there's definitely pretty cool tools out there. Like if I had an unlimited budget, I would have like I'd have like a team of data analysts working here.
I do have an HR data analyst on the team, and her and we connect on a weekly basis, and it's just I always go, Shannon, I need something. So
Yeah.
she'll like, she's the guru, and I'm like, oh, you're the best. I love it. It's like I just need something like, we're looking for. She helps me with figuring out, what our salaries are for a particular role, especially if it's a new role that we haven't recruited for in the past. We haven't documented, and we're creating something new to kind of give me an idea of what they just finished up doing an entire salary review that took forever because the company they were working with took their sweet time signing the contract. So it just got finished for 2022, which is basically just in time for us to do 2023.
Right.
So,
Right.
But yeah, we have one, and she's amazing. And I told her about what the expert package looked like at Greenhouse, and I totally just made her probably month or year, whatever. So she's looking forward to having that BI integration, so she can create some more dashboards.
Oh yeah, so you're gonna get a data tool stack on top.
I think so. Yeah, that's the goal. And I'm trying to get them to just basically, we use HCM obviously for a lot of things, but I think she wants to. I told them I'm like, whatever BI you're using, we can totally integrate that with Greenhouse. So once we get the expert package, as long as they approve me for it, so I can spend some money.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the Greenhouse expert pack, I mean, that's not going to cost too much. I think it's more of like the BI tools that can be kind of expensive, right? Like, I mean, Greenhouse, I mean, that's not a huge increase in cost, right?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that we would get Workday, because Greenhouse is an amazing integration with Workday, and basically all my stuff goes into everything that we do in Greenhouse just automatically goes over there, and I can manipulate the data however I want to pull graphs and reports and everything. And I was looking forward to that. So hopefully, fingers crossed that the recruiting fairy will say yes, we can have that.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed as well. I hope it works out.
Me too.
Well, hey, look, this has been a great combo. We're actually coming up on time, so I think we're gonna have to call it. If we go into any other topics, it's just gonna be kind of rushed. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for joining me today on the show. And before we sign off, if people want to follow you online, engage with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Best way to get in touch is my LinkedIn profile. It's open to everybody, so just go ahead and look me up. And happy to have chats with anybody about anything. If anybody needs any insights into recruiting, or if you're looking to work at MCG, happy to see if we have anything that might help you out.
Oh, for sure. That sounds really good. So, oh yeah, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
For sure. And for everybody else tuning in, thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.